Hello, lovely podcast people. I hope you are well in this festive season. I imagine this podcast will be going out around Christmas or New Year's or just after, so I do hope that you've had a lovely time. I did a question box on my Instagram saying, if you could have anything for Christmas, what would it be? And 75% of the answers were extremely, I'm going to use the word depressing, and that's not to take away from them, but my goodness, I sort of like on the one hand, it was like, you, winky face. So I'm like, I'll share that one and make a joke about it. And then it's like, I'd like my dead family member back at the dinner table for Christmas. It's like the emotional roller coaster of reading through. I must have had maybe a couple of hundred sort of comments in the question box. And genuinely, 75% like that. And then it's like going through and just like, I'd like a bigger garden. And then the next one, I'd like to be able to see my family who I haven't seen for 5 years because of coronavirus. Like, oh my goodness. So I shared some of them because, as with the podcast, I want to add some wisdom to your life or just a reminder of some things that might help. And one of those is perspective. So again, I have been down in the dumps a few times this year, and to put it very mildly, and it's sometimes in the right time, in the right place, a good time to be able to grab some perspective of what other people are going through, and to be grateful that you're not having to deal with, say, personal health issues or very bad health issues of a family member or super difficult, stressful financial strain or, the loss of a loved one, etc., etc. So anyway, I really, really hope that Christmas and New Year, which is a very, very difficult time for many, has been as good as possible for you. I don't want to sound fake and just be like, it's been amazing. But yeah, I do hope it has been as good as possible. So this is just a quick intro to a podcast that I did with Adam, the breakfast guy. And we really just focused on PCOS. And honestly, I think it's probably the most in-depth account of PCOS information in one place, in one, ability to consume all at once without having to kind of scroll through Instagram posts type scenario that I've ever done. So I really hope you enjoy it. I hope you can share it around with people who might get more from it. I constantly get DMs from new people who have been sent to me by their personal trainer or nutritionist or whoever, friend. Hi Martin, just wondered if you can help with my PCOS. Apparently you're the guy. And that's it. And it's like, oh my goodness, where to start? Let me just do a consultation in my DMs of Instagram. And that's not, again, to insult those people. It's just, it's super time consuming. And so now I hope lots of people can be sent to this specific podcast because there's so much in there. He asked me what my top 3 things were, which is a difficult question to answer really, and you have to hone it down to 3. Talk about lots of the, I suppose, lesser discussed things around the mindset when you do have PCOS and you want to change certain aspects of your health or the way you look or anything like that. Discuss some of the advice you probably should ignore that you might see out there. So anyway, I'll just leave it at that. It's a really good, long podcast. I know some of you love these, so enjoy. Let me know what you think. Please do share it around. It's always, your Christmas gift to me this year. Take that. There you go. Maybe I'll do that. I'm going to record another podcast in a minute, which I might release on Christmas Day. And I'll say this on that one too. But please, if you've enjoyed this podcast, it's just over its year anniversary. Take 5 minutes out of your day to sit down and leave a review on iTunes if you do use it. Annoyingly, for Android users or Spotify listeners, you can't do that so much. But again, something that is truly meaningful to me, with an endeavor like this that hopefully gives back a bit, is just to receive feedback in the form of just sharing the podcast around and recommending listeners. Someone did a post today, just a brand new listener. She had heard me on Paul Dermody's podcast and she came across to my podcast and said it's the only podcast that ever makes her laugh out loud. Again, makes me feel good. I know I am a humorous individual. Not so much today, but it's always nice to be told that is coming through on the podcast in live audiences, which is obviously my passion and thing I love and feel most alive doing. It's easy when you've got a whole room of people just laughing, and it's more difficult when I'm talking to an inanimate object in a box room on my own. But anyway, so that's my Christmas and New Year's wish, if I can ask you for something. Yeah, cool. Hope you enjoy it. And until next time, much love.
What's going on, guys? And welcome back to a brand new episode of the Let's Talk Fast podcast. I'm your host, Adam Martin, more commonly known as the No Breakfast Guy. And I hope you're doing what you love with the people that you love. And let's just jump straight into it. Well, it's been a hell of a time to get this incredibly busy man, but incredibly educated man on the show. We've been trying to get this sorted for, I think it's been close to 2 years, but it's at least 18 months. But he's certainly no stranger to many of my audience. Martin McDonald, CEO of Mac Nutrition, host of his own podcast, Not Another Nutrition Podcast. But I think most known for his ability to probably do the greatest tricep flex on the planet. Martin, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me, Adam. Really appreciate you inviting me.
Not at all, mate. Well, I guess there's not going to be many people I know from my audience because I said I've had many requests when I say, hey, who would people like to have on the podcast? Your name is certainly one of those ones that comes up, and people keep saying, why hasn't he been on yet? Why hasn't he been on? It's like, well, you can't just say, hey, can you come onto my show and say, just drop an hour of your time to come and see me. So I'm really, really glad that you're here. And again, thank you in advance for your time today.
Yeah, no, it's that's nice to know that people have requested. I always enjoy that. I was saying to someone recently that we're doing this live event in November, and one of our international speakers, because of the world being turned upside down, as you said earlier, has had to pull out, and we've got this free speaking spot, and I obviously love public speaking. It's if I could only do that now, then I probably would and just get rid of everything else. But unfortunately, I've created this course that you're aware of, and it's unfortunately takes up a lot of time. But I'm tempted to do the speaking slot, but I don't want to do it just for the sake of just being on stage with all those people. It would be amazing. I want them to be turning up to hear something that, a topic. I want to put out a topic and people go, do you know what? I really want to hear that talk and go to that. But it's nice that people are perhaps looking forward to hearing what I have to say today. And I know you've got some cool topics lined up. So yeah, I'm excited. So thanks very much.
No worries. Well, just to kind of give, I guess, a bit of background to those who might not know who you are, kind of what is the story of Martin and kind of who are you today and kind of how did that all come about? And I guess Mac Nutrition and everything that kind of a circle, I guess, encompasses all of that.
Goodness. Wow. How long have I got?
Take as long as you need.
So quick background to me. It's a long time since I've done one of these. I went through a period of doing loads of podcasts, guest appearances, and I kind of had it down to a T, so I'll have to remember what I used to say. But I initially started out in the realm of sports science. And whilst I was doing my undergraduate degree in sports science, I snapped my ACL in my left knee playing football, and then kind of got into weight training. And I've always been obsessed with muscles. A lot of people see, I've been seeing on TikTok a lot recently, people like, people think people who go to the gym are obsessed with themselves, but really this is our therapy. But genuinely, that's not me. I don't go to the gym for therapy. I actually hate the gym. But I'm sort of obsessed with the effects it has. And I bought my first bodybuilding book my first weight set when I was 12, saved up pocket money to buy the Encyclopedia to Bodybuilding by Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm not sure if you're aware of that.
Wow.
I've got it on my shelf here, but it's like a £50 book, and when you're 15, that's a lot of money. But so as I was studying sports science, I ended up competing in natural bodybuilding for 5 years, and it really sort of unlocked my passion for nutrition. Just realizing how much of an impact nutrition can have on the human body, how different as well. I guess what I was doing was to maybe general government guidelines. I mean, you kind of said there about the No Breakfast Guy. I'm sure there's a story behind that, but it's things like that wasn't one of my initial epiphanies, that not everyone needed to eat breakfast and it wasn't necessarily the most important meal of the day. But things like you could eat far fewer carbohydrates than maybe we're typically told, and you just adapt to all of these things, and maybe slightly higher protein intake, and what that did to your cognitive function as well as performance in the gym and recovery. But anyway, then I went on to do my master's in nutrition, and sort of started to specialize there and started my consultancy. But also, I love teaching, I love lecturing, I love being center of attention, which it's funny, like, oh, why did you go into lecturing? Well, to be honest, just because I was guaranteed an audience every week. They have to be there, they pay to be there. But I just, I do love, I've got kind of a pastoral side to me, the education side of things. And so through the lecturing, I then ended up starting my consultancy, working with athletes on nutrition. And because of my bodybuilding background, essentially I was young, stupid, and reading stuff off the internet, which is more often than not incorrect. But, and starved myself for bodybuilding competitions. And if I could do it now, I'd do it very, very differently. But people just look at you and go, oh, you must know a thing or two about nutrition and body composition. I was studying a degree, I had some academic knowledge, but it just kind of fast-tracked me a little bit, I guess, into sports where body composition. So I was the lead performance nutritionist for British weightlifting and Paralympic powerlifting for, quite a few, a couple of Olympic cycles, world championships, and 8 years really involved with them. And it just kind of led to more stuff. Then I ended up working with a couple of low-level celebrities that mentioned me on TV, and my consultancy side just took off. And that then was my first career, really, was the Mac Nutrition consultancy, working with, it was athletes, but then it became general public, and then it became corporate wellness and everything that it grew to become. And just because then I love educating, I love the positive side of social media, and, being able to help people on like this grand scale. And started, I guess, educating other professionals. And I don't mind being controversial. I don't mind calling out bad practice and stuff like that. So then the controversy kind of, oh, this guy's quite interesting. Well, I'd like to hear what he's got to say. So it grew. And, over a period of maybe 4 years, was educating practitioners, doing mentorships. And there was just this big cry for, like, there's nothing out there that's just truly evidence-based, based in the science, based on real life practitioner expertise, in nutrition. Can you create this longer form course? And, funny story, it was just going to be a little YouTube course, like 12-week course. And I announced that I was going to release this, like, Martin McDonald qualification. And the internet blew it up, and everyone was like, he's creating this thing, it's going to be amazing, it's going to be the best course in the world. And I was like, oh crap, like, I wasn't really thinking it was going to be all that. I just thought I was going to provide something half decent. And so we almost did a bit of a crowdfund thing, and it just became massive. And then Mac Nutrition Uni was born. We basically shut down the consultancy and wrote this amazing course that I can say amazing now because those are other people's words, like life-changing course, global course now in 65 countries, and created something that I'm now very, very proud of, and is, I guess, has been a bit of a game changer in the industry. And, being able to, and I truly believe in it, in that I never created it to replace anyone else or to compete with anyone else. It was standalone. But there are now people quitting their degrees and their masters in dietetics and nutrition and doing Mac Nutrition Uni instead. And initially I was a bit like, don't do that. Like, we still live in a world where people like BSc after someone's name, or they, a dietitian is somehow seen as this amazing practitioner being able to help people in the real world. Whereas dietetics is a very specialist subject where you're helping people in clinical situations, in hospitals, tube feeding. I would never try and do that myself. I would never try and tell our students and graduates to do that. But I'd put any of our graduates against a dietetics graduate to help people in the real world, in real situations, with behavior change, nutrition for manipulation of body composition or sports performance or these kind of things. But really, that's where I am today, is, yeah, I've become more of a CEO, having to run this ship. But that's why I love doing stuff like this, just to kind of still keep giving back, still having the nice. I've just posted on my Instagram story today about a lady who's just followed my content for a year and has gone a huge way to reversing her PCOS. And it's all just free content. And it's just like, I've just read your post, absorbed, applied. And she just wrote this really lovely comment on my most recent post, and I just sort of screenshot it. And so doing stuff like this, I really enjoy, because it's just nice to still have that connection on a one-on-one level. Unfortunately, I can't go, we were meeting up weekly to help her situation, but and then my tour talks that hopefully when the world is a bit more normal, I'd love to get back to Australia. And I'm supposed to do New York and Toronto in 2020, but again, just the world shut down. But doing these public talks, much more aimed at the general public, it's kind of just, I get a lot of compliments about my podcast and making complex things simple. I think it is a skill. It's not something I've practiced, but I think when you really understand stuff, it becomes easier to dumb it down, and it doesn't feed my ego too much, because I like being the clever person in the room. I value that about myself, but being able to truly help people, I think you do have to just almost humble yourself a bit and go, really, telling them about the practical stuff is far better than talking about transcription factors in their adipose tissue and the changes that insulin resistance will cause. It's just like, it doesn't help, but it's that's the fun stuff for me, which I just have to geek out with people like you maybe. But yeah, anyway. So that's me.
I mean, the way you kind of, obviously we led into PCOS, and I'd certainly love to go down that tunnel with us today. And I don't know exactly what I'm calling this podcast yet, cool. But it'll be something around, talking PCOS with Martin McDonald, but whatever it might be. Perfect. But I kind of just wanted to share with you a little bit of a story to kind of give you back and in a way feed your ego as well in this place. Because nice. In that my exercise science degree as well, I kind of went through that in being a 18-year-old young horny male kind of thing, thinking I'm going to get this exercise science degree, I'm going to be a PT, I'm going to take care of celebrities and really hot young models, and that's going to be what my job is for the rest of my life. And I mean, I'm very open to say I'm 5'8", I'm skinny, scrawny, and I was even more so back then. And I had a girl on a date once basically say that, "Oh, you're a PT, you don't look like one." And from that moment, it was like, it kind of just struck me to the heart when I'm like a 19-year-old kid kind of thing. But I remember one of my first kind of clients, and most of my clients was a more middle-aged woman. And I basically, because I was that I'm unthreatening to people, because I am short, I'm small, I'm very softly spoken usually, and kind of easy to get along with. I kind of struck up a chord with more 40, 50, 60-year-old females. And when I got into kind of clinical practice and I started my business, I very quickly realized that the other PTs that were on the gym floor who had those model-looking kind of younger females, a lot of those younger people didn't have a lot of money, whereas my 60-year-old clients were very wealthy and very affluent, and then they had affluent friends. And so my business exploded by taking on obviously these lovely older ladies that I was working with, and had much more complex issues anyway that I actually enjoyed working with, rather than the conversations I used to overhear that they were kind of going through over there. And so that kind of streamlined my kind of career. And that's kind of where I've been to. And I've now completely turned it on my head because my business had to be shut down because of COVID. We were in a massive lockdown in Australia for 5-6 months. All gyms were closed. My clinic had to close. And so I was already pivoting to a more online kind of space anyway, a couple of years prior to that. But I guess this forced it upon me. And I've kind of started my own kind of program online. And you have been a big inspiration in that you've created, something out of what was just going to be a 12-week course. I have a 10-week course, and it's now something I'd love to turn into some sort of school-based process where I'm actually getting everyday people who are learning or wanting to learn how to lose weight, do it sustainably, look at the mental health side of it, the physical health side of it, and the whole kind of I guess education around that is something I'd love to kind of mold that into the future. And so, yeah, watching your stuff and how you've gone about it, I'm sitting there writing notes, always like, oh, that's a good idea. I like that. And so, just to say, I thank you for what you do and how you go about it. It's certainly shaped a lot of what I do, and I know me helping people is a product of you helping me. So I thank you for that.
Yeah, no, that's really nice to hear. It is funny. I mean, and it's really nice to be told that stuff. So I do appreciate it. And I often find myself doing I started doing Instagram stories about 3 years ago. And I go through phases of just going, what's the point? And I like it when I'm in a jovial mood. Like, I love making people laugh. It's another part of the public speaking. It's not just education. I think it's a nice gift to be someone who can make people laugh. And then if you can make nutrition or learning fun because you make it funny, it's cool. But other times I'm like, what's the point in this? I'm just chatting, and I'm not educating loads, and because it just gets boring if it's just constant like science. But I do get snippets like you've just given there of, showing what the life of a CEO is. I'm getting more comfortable with that term. It feels funny because I don't feel like a real CEO, and I'm sure you've seen the way I am with my staff. It's just like, it's a bit of a fun house, and but kind of showing the realistic business side of things. I used to talk more about loneliness, because as a business person, or even as an online PT or nutritionist, whoever you are, there is a level of, if you're not in a company, it can be quite a lonely world. And our mentoring lab, it's quite a nice community, because lots of these people are, people go, oh, it's amazing just being able to work in a coffee shop. It's amazing just being able to work at the beach, or blah, blah, blah. And it's like, but you're on your own, which over time sucks. So having other people who are walking the same journey and that kind of stuff. But it is nice to kind of go, yeah, I'll just show some of the reality of, the highs and lows of business and how I've done things. And, even some of the boring stuff like GDPR, like that was a new thing when I don't know if it's GDPR global, or we've got this new thing. I don't know if it's the EU or before, whatever. And, or now the UK,
Yeah.
But all of this, people being able to own their data, like, and you have to basically file exactly how you keep people's information. Like, it's almost like a money making exercise. It's horrific. But anyway, the boring side of business and helping people is then having to do that. But anyway, yeah, so I appreciate it.
No, not at all. Well, again, as I said, I just highlighted that you spoke about that lady who shared, something around your content on PCOS in particular. And as I said, it's certainly a topic that I'm starting to, as I go more into the world of helping, as I said, mostly females. I think 95% of my clients are female. So I'm seeing much more of it. And it's certainly something that I'd love to be able to help my clients with more. You are certainly an authority on this topic, and you've certainly done a lot more research and a lot more knowledge-based research on that. And I'd love you to share just some of, I guess, the myths out there that people hear, and kind of clearing some of those up, as well as what are some of the dietary requirements? Are there dietary requirements? Are there things that we should be looking to have more of, less of? All those kinds of things is kind of giving a bit of a background to what is PCOS in a nutshell, and kind of what should most women be looking out for, and what should they be doing on that kind of footpath to kind of help with the symptoms or the condition itself.
Yeah. I often get asked, just as a bit of a prefix, like, and it is funny because I don't know if you know, it's just been PCOS Awareness Month. So I've been putting out more content, and I get all these, and the entire PCOS realm is very female dominated. And I've had to bite my tongue a little bit, because, I get gypped sometimes about, like the fitness industry gets gypped, and there's lots of gender-based crap going on in terms of, oh, men, women, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, just stop making stuff about gender. I even just did a post about, when I posted that one about that woman with PCOS, I said, I'm just a white CIS, thin, privileged male over here doing my thing, sort of thing, just helping people, because there's so much negativity. And, but anytime it's like, oh, there should be more equality. But I've donated thousands of pounds to PCOS charities, and like sold my talk and given all the proceeds away. And And then you just see all these PCOS Awareness Month panels, and it's just literally 6 women. And I'm like, where's the equality? It's just like, I've got a, unique point of view in it. And like even breastfeeding, I've done some good content on breastfeeding, and it's like, even people without any qualifications going, what do you know? You're not a woman. And I'm like, I don't need to have breasts to be able to talk about evidence-based, the science, the research on this area. But I actually got into the PCOS realm because my first child, Orly, my baby, is a bit of like a PCOS success story. And then I had family members who I sort of helped early doors, and then did my postgraduate clinical nutrition postgraduate and my research project, research review. I focused around PCOS, and it just so happened that my professor at the time was a leading researcher in the area. So it was cool. And it was a really good experience because I went in with a very critical mindset and ended up really criticizing some of the recommendations that she had made in her, big, global publications on the area, and backed up my thoughts. And she gave me my best grade that I got in my whole postgraduate. And I was like, I had so much respect for her at that point, that because I wasn't attacking her. I was just like, this is my take on things, and this is why. And I think maybe there's a bit of a generalized approach that's been given here instead of specific. And she took it, and gave me a great grade, and sort of bolstered this interest I had. And so just ever since then, it's just an area that I've really, really invested in. And like yourself, working with a certain demographic, you see it more and more, and you want to help people, and therefore you do your research. And there are myths. And I suppose the first thing I want to say about this area is lots of the stuff, like I often think I should use the tagline more of like making nutrition sexy. I was like going to use that as a bit of a tagline for my podcast, because unfortunately the myths and the misconceptions or the myths and the dogmatic approaches are a lot more sexy. They're a lot more alluring than good, boring, bog standard advice. Are you big into memes? Do you look at memes ever?
I like Dr. Nadolski. I think he's last. Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's great fun to watch.
Yeah, so he's a friend of mine. He's used this one before. So there's like a guy. There's 2 girls. His girlfriend, I presume, stood next to him, and he's like turning around looking at this other girl. Yep. Have you seen that one?
Yeah.
Cool. So I've got this meme, and I never managed to post it during PCOS Awareness Month, but it's like the girlfriend who, they're both good looking girls. And so, but he's obviously looking at the one he hasn't got. But so I was on the girlfriend, it's like good, effective, but boring advice. And then the guy in the middle is the woman with PCOS. And over there, it's like BS, quacky, sexy, non-effective, expensive advice. But it's always just looking, grass is greener on the other side. And it is unfortunate, because when someone gives you this golden spoon of cut out dairy, cut out gluten, if you do that, your PCOS will be fixed. It's such a bold statement. It's such a attractive prospect that if I just do those 2 things, I'll be sorted. I don't have to try long term. And this is why, in other realms, I'm sure you're aware, it's like, just cut out carbs, you'll lose weight. It's a very easy single thing to follow. You don't have to worry about other macronutrients. You don't have to count calories. You don't have to measure stuff particularly. You don't have to, pay attention to all these other variables that are important for health. You just do that, and and we know that it's in the short term somewhat effective. But with PCOS nutrition advice, lots of the stuff that works isn't sexy, and you do have to look at the whole of the situation. And I'll just touch on what you said about what is PCOS. So there's something I tend to go by, what's called the Rotterdam criteria. And essentially you've got these 3 facets. And I've got a Venn diagram, which is out there on the internet, but it's the same as any Venn diagram if you put it into Google. And you can have cysts on your ovaries, multiple cysts. So that's your polycystic side of things. And then you've got hyperandrogenism, so elevated levels of androgen, so high testosterone, which I'll go into that in a minute. And then on the other side, you've got menstrual cycle, dysfunction. So amenorrhea, so the loss of your menstrual cycle, or oligomenorrhea, sort of just long periods of missed cycles and this kind of stuff. And you only have to have 2 out of the 3 to have sort of this PCOS diagnosis. And so you get to this element of, what are we trying to sort here? And a key factor within PCOS is insulin resistance. And it's a funny one because, and one, I think a good thing for people to realize is this insulin resistance seems to be intrinsic to PCOS. So if you take a group of control females, similar age, similar body weight, etc., and then women with PCOS, again, these are randomized groups, but there's no difference on the surface of these individuals in terms of, people say, well, the women with PCOS have higher body fat. No, we have control for that. They're the same, but at the same kind of BMI is often used. And hopefully your audience is sort of aware there's inherent flaws with BMI, but we'll ignore that for now in the general population. But at the same BMI, there is a statistically significant higher insulin resistance in women with PCOS. So this is why we know it's genetic. There's an issue here that it's not just, well, women become overweight and then of course they're going to get high, their insulin resistance is going to go up and their insulin sensitivity is going to go down. And of course they're going to end up with PCOS. That's not the case. We also had this lean phenotype. So phenotype is like, so your genotype is your genes, your phenotype is what is outwardly expressed in your appearance. So like your phenotype is like your eye color, but your genotype is what genes code for eye color. And so we have this lean phenotype. So you can have PCOS and still be lean, but another woman who's just as lean as you will likely have lower insulin resistance anyway. So there's this interplay, which is a bit, makes PCOS a more difficult condition for us. And so with the hyperandrogenism, you also get some of these symptoms, which are like facial hair growth, hirsutism, and acne, sort of poor complexion, that kind of stuff, as part of that. And then we have the issue of weight gain potentially. And so it's annoying because one of the things, and this is where my controversial side will come out, but one of the issues is that PCOS affects millions of women, and the amount of research funding that goes into PCOS is tiny. And often, even in that tiny amount of research, it's also just focusing on like the additional sort of comorbidities of PCOS. So women with PCOS are more likely to end up with like cardiovascular disease risk factors and cardiovascular disease. So we're then going, women with PCOS have this dyslipidemia. Their blood lipids, their cholesterol, for simplicity's sake, is messed up. And so what diet can we give a woman with PCOS to sort out her cholesterol? And great, it's good that we know that. But what the research has shown is pretty much the exact same that we do for everyone else, which is, I'll maybe go into that as sort of an ending point of the diet for PCOS. But it is this kind of whatever, the Mediterranean diet is such a horrific term in that you can almost just make up what you believe the Mediterranean diet, and you get people from the Mediterranean going, that's not how we eat. and like, so I saw one paper that went, Mediterranean diet is good for insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. And the protocol they used was, people in the Mediterranean don't tend to eat breakfast. And so in this study, they just had coffee in the morning. And it was like, you've literally just made up like, cool that you've had this finding, but I wouldn't go Mediterranean diet is coffee for breakfast, but I'm not, I don't live there. But what we generally understand around the Mediterranean diet of like the olive oil, the, non-processed carbohydrates, the kind of whole grains, the fruit, the legumes, these kind of things. And but also fish oil supplementation. So like massive fish oil supplementation, EPA and DHA being the important omega-3s that we're looking at there. And again, vegetarians and vegan can get algae produced EPA and DHA, so they can still get the exact same benefits. But that's sort of focusing on the cholesterol side of things, as opposed to PCOS specifically, like the early stage. And we know that women who have excess fat, who have PCOS, will across the board benefit physiologically from weight loss across the board. And so we can apply much of what we know about weight loss, almost everything we know about weight loss in terms of behavior change, appetite management, and then setting up the diet in a way that facilitates those things. And so it's easy, quote unquote. I've got that. I don't know if you've seen my quote that people use, but it's like fat loss is easy, but not simple. Mm-hmm. No, it's simple, not easy. Sorry. And it's like one of those things. It's like we understand what we need to achieve. It's just not necessarily always easy to achieve that based on a myriad of different things. But there's and my most recent post on Instagram was, there's no magical diet for PCOS, and there's just simply not. But there are a few things we can. I was trying to sort of say we can make it sexy, because if we go right, I have acne, I have facial hair growth, I really hate those things, and you get people, I'll do anything to get rid of those, and then you go right, eat some chickpeas and some linseeds, and it's like, what? Like, or if I just go eat healthy, add some chickpeas and lentils or whatever to your diet, and they're like, oh, bore off, like they're effort to cook. Whereas if I could give you a chickpea tablet, you'd take it. Even if I went, it'll take 10 years off your life, people would still take it. Like a large percentage of people still take it. But so I'm trying to make it sexy of like, look, if you have these foods, which are high in these things called lignans, they are likely to help with increasing the levels of what's called sex hormone binding globulin. And that binds to the testosterone, which you've got too much of, and it stops it giving you facial hair and acne. It stops that to an extent. Suddenly people go, oh, this guy's talking sexy. I might try on a date one time. That might be my Tinder bio. Hey, you want me to increase your sex hormone binding globulin? But it is one of those things. It's like, I'm not just giving you boring, crappy advice. I'm giving you super science, super evidence-based advice that we have proven to have statistically significant effects specific to you as a woman with PCOS. Now, flip on its head, that would benefit me and you. That would benefit everyone. Everyone should probably eat more legumes, apart from vegans. But I mean, even some vegans would probably benefit because they're just, I call some vegans junk foodtarians. Like when I used to work with athletes, some of them would just go vegetarian or vegan, and they just literally would just eat donuts and like just crap. They just fast foodtarians. They actually just weren't eating a nutritious, what typically would be a really healthy vegan or vegetarian diet. But yeah, we could all benefit with eating more legumes, but making it specific to women with PCOS is like, you maybe more than anyone can get some real physical or measurable or visual benefits from doing these things if you commit to doing it. And so it's stuff like that. When I say about the Mediterranean diet, it's like, you need to eat more whole grains. It's like, like what a boring message. Like even me as someone who's interested in this stuff, I'm like, boring. You're boring me. But I know myself, like I have, I get meals delivered for me, and I specifically go out of my way to look at which of those meals you could, I can pick a really nice like ragu bolognese type option, or I can pick this other really nice one, which is like a gnocchi one that I love. But then I go out of my way to look at the ones, which are the ones of these that are using chickpeas, are using lentils, are using legumes, adding seeds to things, like all of these other areas, which I know I'm don't have time and or the inclination to make these fancy meals with like 3 different beans or legumes in the recipe. But if I'm buying it, or if I go to a restaurant, I'll make that effort. But it's, maybe I'd have more of an inclination if I had a medical condition that I knew was really going to benefit from this. So in terms of your audience and in terms of you working with people, like I've even thought if I had more time, I'd write a cookbook that's like a PCOS cookbook that just had 10 recipes that are relatively simple. They're not fancy recipes because, again, I want to help as many people as possible. And I'm not necessarily trying to work with people who will really want to cook like this amazing dinner. I want to help someone who's a busy businesswoman or busy mum or, busy person, woman, but still has a nice taste to it, and also isn't like, soak your chickpeas for 48 hours. And, it's like, oh, geez, like we'll find other, ways around this to simplify it. I'm sure as yourself, as like a practitioner, it's like you're always looking for almost that bang for buck exercise and that bang for buck method and strategy with someone's nutrition, that it's like as little effort to get, at least 80% of the benefit. I can't remember what that,
I always call it my scale of shit that matters.
Right,
so,
nice.
So the scale down the bottom of, the ladder of the, shit that matters there. The big run at the bottom is the one, as I said, that you need the least amount of input, but gives you the most return on that. And yes, the one at the top does have a benefit. You got to put so much effort, and it gives you this 1% that maybe the Olympian who's lining up on the 100-meter final, it makes that difference between a gold and a silver. But for Joe Smith, who's at home and just needs to have an easy thing to kind of attend to, it's just not worth worrying about until you have these other runs of the scale of shit that matters. Done.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, on this whole topic of like, I'm just going to jump back as well in terms of some of the research on women with PCOS, is we also have this unfortunate situation. So when I started saying there's limited research, I feel like, and I might be guilty of this as well, or at least I say something and people run with it. Like I did this, we put on this clinical conference, or it was the live day that I mentioned that we've got in November, like that one, but 2 years ago. And I did my talk on PCOS. And after that talk, I literally saw, what I had delivered. And unfortunately, it's like, people take one slide and miss all the nuance that I sort of spoke about and just go, this is, so like carnitine is one of the supplements that I mention as a possible benefit. It's like on your pyramid there, it's like high up on the pyramid. But at the same time, it's still somewhat inexpensive and is without too many complications and all these kind of things. So I'm not adverse to people trying it, but they're like basically going, every woman with PCOS will benefit from taking L-carnitine, and this is what, and I'm like, that's not what I said. So you've got this situation where the research is limited, and what I'm getting to is the metabolic rate of women with PCOS, which is a big discussion point. And in fact, I went off to, I've just remembered something I was going to say earlier. Let me just make a little note. I'll come back to it. No, in fact, I won't. I'll do it now. Sorry. Earlier when I was going my controversial side, and then, now I suppose I was saying there's not much research. Basically, there's this petition for I think it's to the UK government, about giving more research funding to the area of PCOS. And I'm irked about it because yes, it needs loads more research on it. But the people that like these big PCOS charities and the people I see doing this are morons, like, and they're promoting moronic messages. So they're like, PCOS Awareness Month, here's 10 accounts you should follow. And yes, I fully admit that I was just like, why the hell aren't I on there? Like as from a purely, what's the word? Self-indulgent feeling. I'm happy to hold my hands up. But at the same time, I look down that list and 5 of the people on that list are morons. And I know they're morons and I know their messages are bullshit. So I'm like, I'm annoyed. I'm like, when they don't give you the money, I'm going to go, that's sad for the women with PCOS, but you don't deserve that money because you're morons. And maybe when you pull your socks up, I'll get on board with you, the sort of bandwagon. But, promoting just non-efficacious messages and promoting like alternative people, people with these alternative method podcasts and, the whole reason that women have PCOS is because they need to be more paleo. And it's like, oh my goodness, these are like some big time doctors in the UK. And also this whole thing of like, no woman with PCOS should be intentionally losing weight. Like one of the people on this panel is literally like part of the fat positive movement. And again, touching on our live day, we've got an expert within the weight stigma realm, body acceptance realm, because lots of this stuff, if you really delve into it, it's like in my PCOS talk, I talk about, do you know what? You shouldn't start the weight loss journey until you're truly ready. And if you have spent a whole life of dieting and you've got a poor relationship with food, you need to sort all of that out first, and then we'll do the simple fat loss that I mentioned earlier, and it'll make that more easy. But whilst you're still in this binge restrict cycle, you're just fighting against yourself. But yeah, this idea that all diets are damaging, all intentional weight loss diets, no matter how well they're done, are damaging because of the whole, just the intuitive eating movement. And I'm not sure how big that stuff over is.
Yeah, there's plenty of it. Yeah.
Okay. Fat positivity, like I'm all about, we shouldn't be shaming people, and all about weight stigma being an issue, but they're just creating this divide instead of conversations that are conducive to moving forward, without two camps, but actually a spectrum of like, these people definitely shouldn't be having a nutritionist or whoever, personal trainer, whoever, going weight loss, weight loss, weight loss. It's like, no, that person really needs to take a step back and maybe deal with some of the psychological side of things. But anyway, so talking about some of this research that needs to happen more, we kind of conclude that women with PCOS often have a reduced metabolic rate. And I think probably, that's the small amount of evidence we have is telling us that. Fine, we'll stick with that as a premise to begin with. But I think we need a lot more research to really draw strong conclusions. But the amount that the metabolic rate is reduced that we think is reduced is profound. It's like remember that control group I was talking about earlier, and then the PCOS group, and you've got insulin resistance, like high level measurable reaching markers of insulin resistance, PCOS, but then you split that into, okay, women with PCOS who haven't got this high level of insulin resistance, and their metabolic rate seems to not be as slowed as those with insulin resistance. But the groups with insulin resistance, I think, just to pluck numbers out there that are roughly what the study found, but don't quote me on the exact number, but it's like 1,850 as a BMR for the control group, and 1,180 as the insulin resistant. It's like a 40% reduction in metabolic rate. That's screwy. The landscape is harder. And so it requires a different mindset to the approach. And that mindset is, I'll draw on like one of those famous quotes, which I'm probably going to mess up, but it's not about having a good hand of cards. It's about playing your hand well. And so just coming at it from a point of acceptance, like, I really like bodybuilding, and I would love to be mega, mega jacked. And I know I'm never going to be mega, mega jacked, but it's a case of I just still have to do the same things anyone else would if they wanted to get more muscular. But I just know I'm never going to achieve that. And in the same way, it's like, I want to lose weight, or weight loss would improve my health and improve the symptoms of PCOS that I want to improve. And it's going to be harder for me. And or I would like to look like XYZ person. And I know I probably never will because I've been dealt this hand of cards, but I'm going to move in that direction and be the best version of me that I can be. But not going, it's not fair. Like the it's not fair mentality doesn't help anyone. Like, I'm just as guilty of it as others. But at least going tackling your own tendency to go, it's not fair. And going, well, no one's going to help you. Like, the life's not fair. You just need to accept that it's not fair and go, how much effort and time resource, money resource, etc., effort resource am I going to put into this endeavor? And I'm not going to get to where someone else could with the same amount of effort. And it's going to take much longer potentially. And once you can start with that mindset, the principles of weight loss, fat loss apply across the board. And I suppose it's nice having an open conversation where your listeners will hear this, but I'm not talking at them or to a specific person, because then they can feel like judgment or shame or whatever, but just kind of hearing it and letting them wash over them. People make excuses, and they lie to themselves. They lie to their coach. They also unknowingly lie to themselves. Like, calorie counting, for instance, is incredibly difficult. And as much as people think that they are reporting accurately, we don't. Like, I've said this before, and I have my fair share of trolls on Instagram. And when I post about PCOS, I always get people from the quacky worlds and again, the just seeing me again as a white, thin, privileged, CIS straight male, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, you're arrogant. You don't know about our struggles, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I probably know more about women's with PCOS struggles than you do, because I've helped so many people and had conversations with so many people and invested over a decade in this area. You're one person who has this incredibly strong bias and attack mentality because you feel you've been dealt this crappy hand of cards, or, people have been horrible to you or whatever. And, but they were saying, you're like one of these people who just says women with PCOS are liars and they're just misreporting their calories. And I'm like, you're human, you lie. Like, unless you're saying you're not a human, you lie. Like, everyone from age 0 has lied, right? You do. And with regards to the calorie reporting data, everyone lies. And I get in so much trouble for saying this, but I'm not ever going to stop. But women lie more than men. And on my tour, I talk about this, and, I give it much more time than I'll be able to give today, but talk about that with compassion and empathy and understanding, or, some sympathy, and understanding of why that might be, because women are dealt a much harder hand of cards than men when it comes to body composition and, I guess, what we would call societal norms or pressures. So there is an obvious reason that women might misreport more than men. Like, really interestingly, children, the research shows children, I use the word lie because it's provocative and slightly funny sometimes, but I just mean misreporting. And I don't mean necessarily, I create these terms, knowingly and unknowingly non-adherent. So you can be unknowingly non-adherent to a calorie deficit. You don't know you're not doing it, but you're just not understanding something somewhere. And children lie / misreport calories less than adults. And when I read that research, I was like, that's really interesting. Like, you'd think kids would get it wrong or lie or whatever. And it's like, did you eat that chocolate? No, I didn't. But you turn it around and you go, adults have more people-pleasing behavior. So you get an investigator in one of these studies, and it's like, what did you eat? And as an adult, you go, like, I have conversations with people all the time about, oh, I had that chocolate. I probably shouldn't have. And because they know who I am, they're like, oh, I probably shouldn't have had that. And I'm like, why? Why have you said that? Why have you needed to clarify that? Because like, have your chocolate. I almost end up eating more junk food myself just to show people that I don't care or whatever. But children, like, did you eat that chocolate? Yeah, I did. And what? And I'll have another one if I want it. It's like there's not this issue. And again, in a weight loss study, you have a female group and you have a male group. The men lose more weight and it's easier for them. They don't have hormonal changes during the study and all this different kind of stuff. And they lose more weight. And it's like, how much weight did you lose as a female participant? Oh, like not much. And I know they've lost loads of weight. What's wrong with me? What did you eat? And then you start going, oh no, I didn't eat that. I didn't, it makes sense. So again, women lie more than men. And, when it comes to calorie reporting or misreport, I should probably just, so that there's a snippet of me just being nice. Female participants in studies underreport their calories more than male counterparts. And then we know that individuals with higher levels of body fat misreport more than leaner individuals. So again, why, you can probably apply the same sort of reasoning that I just went through there. So, but then in the situation of women with PCOS, you do get this situation of, well, if you tell a woman with PCOS and you just do the estimated BMR that, people tend to use, like a Harris-Benedict formula for BMR, it will overestimate their calorie requirements. So it may well be that they are eating X amount of calories, say whatever, 1,500 calories. And that isn't a deficit for them. That is maintenance. And they are called a liar or whatever. And it does irk them, and that creates a chip on their shoulder. But it's when you have situations of, I tell them, you need to be in a deficit to lose weight. No, I've been in a deficit and it didn't work. No, if you didn't lose fat, you weren't in a deficit. No, I was. I counted everything. Blah, blah, blah. Just listen to me. If you're not in a deficit, you won't lose weight. If you are, you will, or fat at least. So, I'm just a messenger. I'm just a messenger of the hardcore, unfallible laws of physics here. But the situation is, maybe you were in an assumed deficit, an estimated deficit, but you weren't in a real world deficit. And so that's why having some of this theoretical knowledge can be helpful, because you go, do you know what? Maybe that's not a deficit for you. Maybe we need to go lower. And then there's more discussions around, sheesh, 1,000 calories a day is not much to be eating. Is this going to be sustainable? What can we do with the other side of the equation, the output side, or whatever? Then you need to study Met Nutrition Uni to understand exactly how to help people to do that. But that's the whole conversation. But at least starting from that point of, it isn't that you're intolerant to carbs. Like, that was my big crusade for a while. It is not that you're intolerant to carbs that you can't lose weight. We go back to these studies in women with PCOS in the real world. These aren't lab rats. These aren't lab humans. These are women with PCOS just like you. And we put them on low carb and high carb diets in a deficit. And we even stratify them based on insulin resistant or not insulin resistant status. And we look at the bar charts of the weight loss, and all of them lose weight, all of them across the board, because they were all in a deficit. But we get these varying size graphs, and it's like, oh, interesting. There might be a slightly greater benefit for low carbohydrate approaches in insulin resistant individuals, whatever. But they all categorically lost fat. So if your body weight's not changing, you have to look inwards. You have to go, what am I missing? Where on the equation am I not hitting this adherence to a calorie deficit? And it's not until you can just own that and you can take responsibility. I'm not someone who believes that, being healthy in the right BMI or whatever is pure personal responsibility. Like, there's huge genetic and environmental factors. I'm not saying that, but you have to at least own your situation and go, you can go, I'm this way and it's not my fault because of my genetics and whatever, as long as you're not lying to yourself. And as long as you know that, your genetics load the gun, but still your habits, daily habits, pull the trigger. And your genetics are not your destiny, but they maybe change the trajectory of your journey, as it were, and maybe where you'll end up. So, yeah, like I've spoken a lot there. I've realized like I've just gone on.
No, I'm happy to absorb all of that. And I mean, I really hope that, people hearing that, I mean, I guess I'm always, biased in the situation in that, this is something I do. I have done it for 20 plus years, and I feel very familiar with what you're saying, but I do believe that you do put it across in a very simple way that people do understand. And that I'm hoping that someone who is sitting there who may have just been given that diagnosis or has had it for years and they've struggled with, losing weight, and they've, had their fights with their PTs or their nutritionists and said, no, but I am doing this. And they've been given bad advice in the past, that some of those clear points that you've made there today can really, just cement something. And as I said, internalize it a bit, I guess, turn it back on them and say, you know what, hang on. Am I being truthful in the last 6 months? Have I really done everything that I could have? Or have I used some excuses to kind of scapegoat myself out of this a little bit, or whatever it might be? And I certainly think that you have. And I really hope that people listening in today have certainly gathered that from it as well.
Yeah. The other thing just to say is, and I don't think I did a very good job of this, or at least I didn't spend enough time on it in the content that I put out this month, but and I created a quote, which was something like, you're not a woman with PCOS, you are you. And I thought it was a bit cheesy, probably, which is why I didn't post it. And I sort of sometimes have this thing of people who just think I'm doing it trying to sound profound, but there is something profound in that statement of, I will get people commenting when I talk about the research and the evidence around dairy, for instance, and there's this whole idea that dairy is inflammatory, and we know the evidence, it seems pretty consistent in showing that dairy either has this neutral or anti-inflammatory impact within our diet. And so I post about this because I don't like the idea that someone thinks, I've got PCOS, I have to cut out dairy, done. And then they do that and their PCOS doesn't improve. And they're like, oh, I'm broken, I'm screwed, like game over. I don't like the idea of that because it's so disempowering. It just doesn't sort of promote change, as it were, or like an environment for change. And then I get people going, well, I cut out dairy and it massively improved my IBS and my skin, blah, 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 blah. And I've got PCOS and whatever. And also I lost weight. And then it's kind of like, well, what were you eating before? Well, I was eating, cheese with every single meal and loads of ice cream and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, of course you did. You just cut out a boatload of calories. But this woman over here who was just having a bit of milk in her tea and whatever did it, and it made no difference for her. Or, was eating lots of yogurt, which was providing, like probiotic yogurt, which was providing lots of protein and nutrients and minerals, whatever. And she's now cut that out and it hasn't improved, if not negatively affected her. So there's two situations of, one, they need to open their ears and just listen and read what I actually write, and also probably educate themselves on some principles. Why did you lose weight? Dairy doesn't stop anyone losing weight. Calories are our underlying principal factor. But on the flip side, you might be an individual who doesn't do well with dairy. That exists, but we treat those two things separately. We treat the PCOS and we treat the dairy, or any other food that you might have a, again, quote unquote, intolerance to, because intolerance is not a very well defined, overly reliable term. We have an allergy is reliable. We can test an allergy. We have IgE, immunoglobulin test to go, eat a peanut. If you go into anaphylactic shock, you've got a peanut allergy. You probably don't need this little stupid test that you buy from the local chemist telling you that you're intolerant to peanuts. You'll know if you've got an allergy, but intolerance testing itself doesn't work. And I see a lot of women with PCOS going for intolerance testing, and you get these millions and millions and millions of people take intolerance tests. You only need a tiny percentage of those people to just by pure luck cut out something that was actually making them feel not great to have 100 testimonials on your website going, this changed my life. But these people don't realize that they're one-off, probably complete luck of the draw that this test happened to hit their intolerance. They just go, no, you're wrong. I can only talk from my experience. Guess what, Karen? No one gives a crap about your experience. They care about their own experience, and they care about, we should all care about science. And, I could literally just, go on a tick list, right? Count this. What have we got? Okay. Strawberries, milk, bread, and it's just like, try that. I could just do that and I'd hit exactly the same as these intolerance tests we're getting. So yeah, it is this thing of like, you are you, and understanding that. And so don't go, oh, I'm fine to eat dairy, when in your heart, if someone trusts me that much, that's an issue. If they go, well, he said dairy's fine, and I know every time I eat it, I feel horrific, but Martin said, like, don't be that person. But understand that you are you, and you'll have a sort of unique situation. And so it is a journey with learning how to deal with your PCOS and what foods you will tolerate. But go with the generalized advice that seemingly does work. This emphasis on slightly lowered carbohydrate, just seemingly across the board, really helps. Making some of the food swaps that I've mentioned. Potentially like emphasizing protein and your distribution so that it's over the day, so we can get this management of appetite that we know happens with elevated protein intakes. And then definitely don't cut out fat. I spent most of my early career fighting against this low fat dogma. Women with PCOS will seemingly benefit a lot from lots of the natural foods that are naturally high in these good fats. So I'll finish talking there.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think you wrapped that up well, because I was going to just then ask, I always like leaving a podcast so someone walks away. Okay, Susie's sitting here and she goes, okay, Martin, you've gone on with your talk and you've said everything here, but what can I do tomorrow? Like, what's the 1, 2, and 3 that I can, have some sort of, real life benefit that's going to help me, and my PCOS moving forward. And I think you kind of wrap that up with those last little, little dot points and nuggets there. But to that, Susie, listening in now, if you had to kind of, on what I used as the scale of shit that matters, what's kind of like the number one thing that is generalized? As you said, there's no magic diet for PCOS. There's no magic kind of, this is the nugget. But for the general kind of consensus that most of the research is showing and what you've seen in clinical practice, what's the one thing that Susie does tomorrow is more often than not going to have a benefit to not only the symptoms that she experiences on a day-to-day, helping with her PCOS on the whole, and kind of just moving forward from where she is currently now, feeling shitty about it all and kind of not seeing results, to actually seeing some results and feeling a bit better about it.
Yeah. So the one thing I will say, which I amazingly haven't mentioned yet, is this supplement inositol, which I made, was looking at the research for this for years and years and years until I really got off the fence and went, every woman with PCOS should try this. And since I've said that, like, I've had people going, we're going to give our child the middle name Martin because, or Martina, because you made this baby happen, not directly, but indirectly through the advice I gave on inositol. And inositol is this really quite unbelievable in terms of something that's so natural. Lots of women with PCOS are told to go on birth control, which is, an unfortunate, I think, first line medical practice, unfortunately. The second line in terms of insulin resistance is they're given metformin, which can have great effects. Unfortunately, lots of people suffer from side effects. And you can take inositol alongside metformin, because that is such a common question I get. And they act via different mechanisms. But inositol, the research is, inositol actually hasn't got to the grade of evidence, or hasn't been put into like these national, worldwide guidelines, NICE guidelines. National Institute of Clinical Excellence, I think, is what NICE is, but they're like our top level medical advice type thing. But it only take Susie, I think you called her, 2 minutes to log onto my Instagram, or just type in Martin McDonald inositol into the internet, and you find the dosages that I recommend, and the evidence is just overwhelming in terms of regulating menstrual cycle, in terms of improving fertility outcomes, which a lot of women with PCOS obviously have issues with. And other symptoms of PCOS improving with inositol supplementation. And it's a very well tolerated natural supplement, very inexpensive. It just takes some effort to take it twice a day. And but is really, really profound. And in terms of the scale that you're talking about, it's so little effort. Like, it's literally 10 seconds of your whole day, and 50p of money, and you're done. That's it. And it's having these huge benefits. Unfortunately, the next step up from that is they're all bigger, much bigger effort, time and effort, resource tasks of, exercise. It, incredibly beneficial for women with PCOS. And it's not sexy advice, because it's, everyone should exercise. I've not got time to exercise. I've not time to do more steps, or whatever. But in terms of exercise being this dramatic, having this dramatic impact on insulin sensitivity, make time for it. If you want to improve your PCOS, make time for as intense exercise as you are sort of comfortable doing. And then I think the next key area would just be looking at carbohydrate. Like, it's just seemingly, again, for a lot of people, it's just an area. If we've been lazy, I'm super lazy with my diet when I don't. That's why I have these meals, because it just forces me into good habits. But when I'm taking care of myself, I don't take care of myself. And again, that's partly just because of my privileged situation of genetics, of I can look a way that I'm just sort of relatively comfortable with without any effort, which is unfair. And I own that unfairness. But from someone who wants to make these changes, consider these things about, are you eating a lot of bread, a lot of, white bread, white rice, chips, whatever, which are not, I don't want to sort of demonize those as foods, but in your situation, the research shows with very little effort, just, when people talk about low carb being better for PCOS, it's not low carb. Literally, these studies will take people from like 55% to 43% of their calories coming from carbs. And all these statistical significant changes happen in area under the curve of insulin. And like that, we're not talking keto. We're not talking a life of no carbs. We're talking get that under control. And if you're just snacking on popcorn, it's low calorie popcorn, like don't do it. Go for something, find a nut that you like. And start snacking on nuts, make that small effort change, which is a small bit of effort. You have to engage your brain and go, do you know what? I'm going to buy some cashew nuts. So I'm going to make a nut mix and I'm going to have some of those. So just look into, we could talk about carbohydrate intake for a whole nother podcast, I know, but it's like, just look into it. Start that step on your journey. I mean, you might have other podcasts they can listen to, and they can go and start doing their research in their area on what they can do.
Just on inositol really quickly.
Yeah.
Is that something that they have to go to their doctor to kind of be prescribed? Is it something that's over the chemist counter, or like where are they getting this from?
Yeah. It literally, you can get it anywhere. Like, jump onto Amazon, MyProtein. It's just a powder or a capsule. It's nothing that is gonna, it's not like a pharmaceutical or anything like that. They can just jump on, grab some powder, measure it properly. I tend to say, like, get some little scales so you can weigh it out, the amount of powder you need. If you get capsules, obviously you don't need that, but it just means you're popping a fair few capsules sometimes to get like an effective dose. And expense wise, I'm always sort of try to give the sort of cheap economical version, but I know some people do have money to burn, and so knock yourself out, go and buy these expensive capsules or tablets and take lots of them. But yeah, just myo-inositol, which if it just says inositol, it will be myo-inositol. And yeah, they can just get it anywhere. And realistically, people go, do you have specific brands you recommend? I don't really. And unfortunately, because of having an audience that's in, worldwide, it's like where you'll get it from in Australia versus America versus UK versus whatever. It will be different. And I'm happy. Like, I spend a lot of my time on Instagram. If people want to just send me, I'm getting this one, I've done my research, it seems like the one, shall I buy this? I don't like, which one shall I use? Because I'm just like, you're being lazy. But if you've done your research, you've sent me a link and I click it and I go, it's see everything I can see from the outset. If that company's, because this is the other problem, supplements are not regulated well. So if you go and get one from your local gym or whatever, like, and it's not a sealed packet and whatever, it's just, there's dodgy stuff, but it's like, if they're generally a large reputable company, you'll be all right. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, yeah, Matt, I really appreciate all the time you've given over to walking through the ins and outs of PCOS, and I have no doubt that people are going to find benefit from this podcast. And I guess moving forward for yourself, what's coming up for you? How can people find you? How can people kind of consume your content? Like, want to obviously give you the stage to be as blatant as you want, plug what you want, tell people where they can find you. Because as I said, I've spoken about you many times. I've tagged you in many things, and my audience have certainly appreciated what you've done. But for anyone who hasn't found you yet, like, where can they find you and what can they see you on?
Yeah. So I sort of mention my Instagram often, at Martin Nutrition. I've got my website, martin-macdonald.com, which, again, if people are interested, because I do these tours around the world and I always make stuff super economical. If they want to sign up for I call it my Mac Mail newsletter, maybe I'll shoot you a link for the newsletter so people can like click it in the description of this.
Yeah, and I'll put it in the show notes. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And I do send out so much free stuff here and there, and because it's just, I feel very privileged of where I've ended up in life, as it were, in my career and things like that. So it's, my podcast is just really purely just a hobby for me, and doing stuff like this, it's like I spend a lot of time doing these tour talks, and it's not a big money earner for me. It's just like, it's a passion. It's what I really love doing. So if they log on to there, if I do stuff on PCOS, I've already thought about writing a little ebook. And, my first thing was like, I'll sell it for £10. And I was like, do you know what? And then I'll just give everyone 90% off if they're a member of my Mac Mail. So it's like 99p for something I could charge hundreds and hundreds of pounds for. But it's just like, I'm more interested in just people getting that good information. So if they do that, like, I'm sort of selling it in that way of just like, get on there. If you want to help yourself, you have, it's almost like lead a horse to water. It's like, just do that. Do some work yourself, and I would love to help out. And if you have any UK listeners, I was actually talking to my Frankie, who spoke to my PA before this podcast. But if we've got this live event in November, And it's cool just to meet people face to face as well. And it's just like nice creating that community, and lots of people go away with like friendships and sort of support each other in their journey and those kind of things. And like we've recently had someone sign up for MNU, but he saw me speak many years ago at a big fitness expo, and he sort of followed my journey. He's lost an unbelievable amount of weight, changed his life, and now he's like, I want to change my career. So it's super cool, like that it started at one of these public talks. But we've sort of said we'd give, I can't remember, it's like 40% off a ticket. So I'll give you that, and then people in the show notes, they can, if they want to, come along to that talk, 40% off the full ticket. Then it's such a cool day. I love our live events. We really look after people, get like hot buffet lunches and all day refreshments. And I almost want to be a bit cheeky online and just go, whenever I see another expo and I see how much they're charging and you don't get anything, like I go to some of these events, it's like, there's no teas and coffees. There's not even like water to drink. It's like, oh, you've got like 23 minutes for your lunch break. And there's a Tesco's 15 minutes down the road. So if you run there and back, you'll only miss the first 10 minutes of thing. And it's like, we're like, look, we've put on lunch for you. It's this amazing, 4-star hotel buffet lunch, and it's included in your ticket, as well as all the goodies, as well as all the talks. It's, so yeah, that's my big plug, is like, if you're in the UK or anywhere you can get to the UK, come to that event. It's going to be, I'm so psyched about it, because it's obviously 2 years since we've been able to do anything really, anything, like go out of our houses. I know you guys are still struggling with it. I'm sorry about that, but hopefully moving forward, things are going to get better, right?
Yeah, well, I actually started this Instagram page of mine back in 2016-ish. And I've spoken about this a long time but I had huge issues when I was running my business, and mental health issues when I was just cooking myself with obviously too many hours at work. And so I took a year off with my wife and then 1-year-old daughter. And we went and lived in France for the year. And so when I started that page, I was in Europe. And so 40% of my audience is actually from the UK. So I have a very large, I say very large, but relatively large UK audience. And so I'm going to selfishly say, any of my audience listening on here, make sure you go up to Martin and say, I'm here because I heard you on the podcast, and maybe I'll get you back a bit quicker next time from that. And so, but no, I really hope that, people do come out, because I love talks and I love going to see people that, I obviously look up to and I love their information at seminars. And obviously that's certainly been cut a lot over the last couple of years. And so I'm certainly looking at getting back to seeing and doing things as well myself. And so, I really hope that your event goes really well, mate. And I hope that, someone, if not more, come along and can, as I said, just tap you on the shoulder and say, I'm here because I heard you on the podcast. That was a great talk today. So I'd love that for you as well. So I wish you well with it, mate.
Cool. Well, thanks for having me on. I've really enjoyed it, and I hope people get something from it.
Can I just indulge you right at the end? I always have a quick fire 5 of my guests that come on. So real simple questions, real simple answers, just to a quick fire 5, if you don't mind indulging us right at the end.
I don't mind at all.
Excellent. First response that comes to mind: beach or snow?
Say that again. Sorry.
First response that comes to mind: would you rather go to the beach or snow? Okay. I'm just trying to think of, what did you think I just said?
You don't want to know.
I'm thinking it's bitch or something along that kind of line, and something else because of my accent. I can only imagine.
No, beach, definitely.
Yep. If you could travel in one way or the other, would you rather go to the future or the past?
Past, I think.
I always like to have a follow-up to that. Is there somewhere in the past that you're thinking of that you would go to?
My thinking was, if you go into the future, you can't necessarily come back, right? So, but if you can always travel one way, you can go back to the past, and you can basically it was about buying time, and also probably changing decisions I've made. So that was my thinking. Nothing too decent.
Fair enough. No worries about nutritional value or anything like that. What's the one food that you'd have for the rest of your life if you could only have one option?
Probably and this is maybe a bit of a cheat, but pick and mix. And do you know what? Australians are morons when it comes to sweets, right? Because you call them lollies, don't you?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And I had this thing, right? So when I was doing my talk in Sydney, it's like an 8-hour talk, or like say 6 hours with breaks. And I'm the whole day talking to this room of like 250 people. And I'm talking about pick and mix all the time because I love sweets. And squashies are this particular type of UK sweet that I really love, but pick and mix. And so pick and mix is like, it's called Candy King, and there's like all these things, and you can like select different sweets from them. And so I'm talking about pick and mix, and this is relevant to loads of the analogies I've given all day long. and then like 5.5 hours in, this guy at the front goes, what's pick and mix? And I was like, does anyone know what pick and mix is? And the whole audience was like, no. And I was like, why did no one tell me, you idiots? And then this woman's like, oh, they're lollies. And I was like, lollies? I was like, and then I went, I'm obviously, is this video? Do your listeners go on video?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yep.
So I can do the hand action. So I was like, and I did it on purpose because honestly, Australian audience are my favorite, like the best sense of humor. There's so few Karens, just funny people with good sense of humors. And so I was like, no, this is a lolly, like that. And this woman in the front row goes, oh no, that's a gobby. Which, as I understand it, is a
Yep.
So anyway, it was hilarious. It was funny, but I was like, so my food that I'd eat for the rest of my life is pick and mix. So obviously you get a variety of different sweets, but I'm just a massive sugar, sweet jellies, squashy sweets fiend.
Perfect. Family, friend, famous, dead or alive, who would you like to have for dinner tonight?
Oh, good question. Do you know what? Oh, there's too many to count. This is mainly because there's a guy called Dr. Viktor Frankl, right? And he wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning. And it's the only book I've ever read, and I still haven't finished it. I've got about 10 pages left. In my whole adult life, I've never read a book, which people I think find a bit weird. So Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. And honestly, it's been, through the last 18 months of my life, which have been probably the worst 18 months of my life, to be totally frank. But it's kind of, some of the messages in there have really kept me going. And and I was also aware of Viktor Frankl before I read the book, because I follow lots of these kind of pages with some quotes, because I just find if a quote hits you at the right time, you can just really sort of sit on it, meditate on it, and just sort of absorb it and be reflective of yourself. And so he's got stuff about, like, one of his quotes is, anything can be taken from a man apart from his ability to choose his attitude towards any given circumstances. So it's like something like that. I've sort of messed up a bit, but essentially it's like quotes like that, which I was like, it's just so profound. It's like, yeah, the life can take anything from you, other than you always hold the power of how you react to a situation. What you see in a situation, you can choose to go with the negative or the positive, and to keep going or not and stuff. But then reading his book, it's literally a game changer. Like, the stuff in that book, it was probably, I'd say, life-changing for me in a way. And much of it was because it did resonate with how I view life and values and morals anyway, but I find it motivating. So he's a clinical psychologist, but basically he spent most of his life, or a lot of his life, in Auschwitz, in the concentration camps, and it's his whole account of that life, which is probably one of the worst lives you can live. And he just talks about basically being able to be positive faced with that. And if he can do that, and we're complaining about COVID, and whilst just sat at home in the warmth with Wi-Fi, it puts stuff in perspective. So probably I'd have him for dinner, because he did seem like a bit of a brilliant man.
Have you ever heard of the book The Happiest Man on Earth?
Oh, no, I don't think I have.
It's a very similar book. A guy who lived through Auschwitz. He saw all of his family killed in the camps, and then he turned 100 and decided to write a book. And
Wow.
so on his 100th birthday, he wrote this book, and he just went back through his life and the accounts of that. Eddie something or other, I can't remember. Like, the front cover is the most beautiful picture of this very elderly man, beautiful smile on him, and it's called The Happiest Man on Earth. And a really, really good book. I'm like you. I've never read a book in my life. I'm so lucky that Audible came along, because I don't mind listening to books. And so I do it when I work out or if I go for a run or whatever it might be. But I hate sitting and reading things. I just did it too much from my master's and having to go through journal article. I was like, I don't want to see another book in my life, kind of thing. So that's another really good book. Kind of very similar kind of pathway from there. And the last one, I know everyone always says they'd want to spend it with their family, but I want you to get super selfish. You've already done this. There's 24 hours left on this planet. What do you do with that last 24 hours for yourself?
Oh, jeez. I probably should have researched your podcast more and found out. I don't know.
So my answer would be spend it with my two children, genuinely.
Yep.
But second, I think it would just be, I just love partying, right? And I get a lot of hate for it, genuinely hate online, because people just think it's like some kind of like I said this quote recently about you build up an idea of what someone's like, and then feel let down by them when they aren't that expectation. And it happens online. They see me as like this father figure, as this kind of upstanding, evidence-based, blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. But I'm genuinely just a bit of a kid at heart, but also just love partying. And, I've had people contact me because whenever I did my tour, it was like 15 events. I'm out clubbing all the nights. And people are like, oh, have you got a problem? Like, genuinely, people like nice people reaching out and being like, I just wanted to check in. Are you all right? And I'm like, this is the best. 2019 was probably the best year of my life. And then followed by the worst 18 months online. But yeah, I think I'd spend it just like, if I could, in your scenario, 24 hours, I could almost pick. I'm just like, I'd probably go back to your university student, just lots of hot, confident, you're surrounded by, I just probably go to Australia, to Bondi maybe, and just have just a party, just basically the most hedonistic party ever. If that's my last 24 hours, that's probably what I do. Like, I'm sure some people I'd go and sit and I'd go for a hike and then I'll watch a sunset on Mount Kilimanjaro, but like, it's just not me. It would be people, craziness. That would be me.
It's interesting you bring that up, because I've asked that. I've had 146 podcasts, I think I'm on. And I'd say 75% of those podcasts have had guests on them. And so I've asked that question a number of times. And for my 100th podcast, I had my business mentor on, who's been in my life for many, many years, a really close friend of mine. And he turned the ships on me and he said, no, I'm not going to let you ask those questions. I'm going to ask them to you. And when he got to that, he's like, so what would you do for your final 24 hours? And the response I gave just completely shook people, because same thing. I'm a father figure, quite spoken guy. I don't drink. I don't party a whole lot. I did all of that in my 20s and I got it out of my system. That's just not. And so my answer to that was, I'd try cocaine for the first time. I'd get behind the wheel of a Lamborghini, and I'd go 300 kilometers an hour down the freeway straight into a light pole. And I'd ended in a blaze of glory. Yeah. And he's just looked at me. He's like, I'm sorry. And the responses I got from people was like, I knew you loved cars, but what the hell was that answer? I was like, I've never, but I just like, I'm going to dictate if I've given 24 hours, I'm going out on the 18th hour and I'm doing it in an absolute blaze of glory and just having the time of my life. So I think if you're coming to Bondi and having a party to end all parties, then I think that's a great answer to have for the last 24 hours.
Well, I'm glad it's not the most crazy answer you've ever been given.
No, not at But Martin, it's been a great fun, Martin. I really appreciate your time and your expertise. And, I think, as I said, what we've shared tonight and you shared across in great depth is certainly going to help someone, move forward from the, predicament or the, position they find themselves in now, and they might be feeling hopeless and just, I've tried everything. I don't know where to turn. I really hope this podcast helped them out. And so I appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Adam.
Excellent. Guys, that's been another episode of the Let's Talk Fast podcast. As I said, all of the show notes will contain everything you need to know about Martin and finding out him and everything that he spoke about. Today, I'll make sure those links are there, and I'll talk to not Martin, Frankie, and we'll get those details in there. But guys, I hope that you've enjoyed this. Do all those things. I've said it a million times before. Review it, star it, and all those things. But guys, I'll be back next week. I love you all. Bye.